Okay, I think we're going to get started. Welcome, everyone. My name is Cole Kopka. I'm the Assistant Director of PacTrans, the Region 10 USDOT Designated University Transportation Center. We're pleased that you could join us for today's PacTrans webinar series in concert with the University of Washington's CEE 327 class. I'm going to introduce our director in just a moment, who's going to introduce today's distinguished speaker. But before that, I just wanted to give you a quick rundown of some of the logistics of Zoom for those who have not used it before or who might not be familiar. If you drag your cursor over your screen, you can see a few different options, one of them being chat. If you need to send a message to any of the presenters today, you can use the chat, but I would recommend, unless you have like technical difficulties or something of that nature, staying away from the chat and keeping most of your interaction today in the Q&A box. So if you click the Q&A icon, the Q&A box will open up and you can ask questions throughout Dr. Briaud's presentation, and then we will get to those at the end of the presentation. If you see a question come up that you like and you would also like answered, there is a little thumbs up button underneath it where you can upvote questions so that they sort, so that we kind of have a prioritized list of which questions you all want to hear about most. So those will be the two ways that you can interact with us today. Again, please submit your questions as we go, and then we'll get to them at the end. So with that, I'd like to introduce our director, Dr. Yinhai Wang, who is a professor of civil and environmental engineering here at the University of Washington.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the PacTrans Leadership Development webinar. And this is concurrent to CEE 327 Transportation Engineering course. We all know leadership is very important in our career development and also in our practice, but we don't have such a course in most of the transportation engineering curriculum. So we're so lucky to get Professor Jean-Louis Briaud come here to deliver a webinar on leadership development with emphasis on technical communications. Professor Briaud is a distinguished professor at Texas A&M University. He is also a distinguished member with ASCE, a professional engineer. He received his bachelor's degree in France in 1972 and his PhD degree from the University of Ottawa in Canada in 1979. His expertise is in foundation engineering and more generally geotechnical engineering. He is president of ASCE and got a lot of awards. Representative awards include ASCE Rough Pack Award, the CGS, Geoffrey Meyerhoff Foundation Engineering Award from Canada, the Honorable Tilevi Medal from Kazakhstan. He's also a member of the National Academy of Natural Science in Russia. He's the author of a book entitled Geotechnical Engineering and one entitled The Pressure Meter. He has published over 300 papers and reports. He enjoys tennis, soccer, and rugby. He plays jazz piano at the amateur level. So you can see Professor Briaud is very talented, not just in civil engineering, but also in arts and other things. He's absolutely a leader. We're lucky to get him share his experience about leadership development. Now let's welcome Professor Briaud to start his webinar.
Thank you, Yinhai. It's a pleasure to come and visit with you. Obviously, I would prefer to be in person with you to see all your faces and enjoy the company, but this strange world we live in these days, this virtual world, actually has some positive aspects, some advantages. I can tell you that I travel a lot, I just don't go anywhere. It allows me to be in one country in the morning and another country in the afternoon, and all this without jet lag or anything like that. So it does have some advantages. I wanted to talk to you, and you'll see some of the leadership comments that come through in several instances, but the talk is in two parts. The first part is about ASCE, and it's probably about 15, 20 minutes. And then the second part is on technical communication. We recently had a client summit at ASCE where we had 20 of the most respected leaders in the field of civil engineering, and many of them told us that one of the things that was missing in the education of young civil engineers was communication, the ability to talk to people, to speak in front of crowds, to interact with clients, and so on. And so I thought I would take this as a topic, and you know, at the same time, if there is a boring topic, that is technical communication, and I'll come back to this. So I'm going to try to make it somewhat interesting. But let's talk about ASCE first. So in my opinion, and I'm a little biased, ASCE is the best civil engineering professional society in the world. It's not perfect though, and the question is, how can we improve it? And I need your help on this. So I need your opinions, your thoughts, how we can continue to improve it. First thing I wanted to do is the dues for full membership are $245 a year. And in my opinion, it's really well worth the money. I mean, the benefits are definitely, you can see this table here, 10 free professional development hours. If you were a non-member, that'd be $1,600. You get that for free. The webinars, you get a $60 discount. And so a few webinars and you pay for your dues. Review courses, if you're in a position to want to become a professional engineer, there is a $650 discount for the book, the review course. And conferences, you get a member discount of about $150. So 2 conferences and you've paid for it. So from the point of view of money, it's clearly a good deal. But in my mind, it's not the real reason why I am a member of ASCE. And it's simply because it's my professional family. You know, in life, we have 2 families, our blood family and our professional family. And we wouldn't think twice about helping our children, our parents, our spouse. We probably should have the same reflex when it comes to our professional family. And, you know, being a civil engineer is mighty exciting. If you go back to the Tower of Pisa on the left here, 1,000 years ago, the Eiffel Tower some 130 years ago, and then those huge structures that keep going higher and higher, Petronas Tower, Freedom Tower, Burj Khalifa, 828 meters, and now the Kingdom Towers in Jeddah. It's not completed, but it's supposed to reach over a kilometer high. This is us. This is you. And every time I'm a little bit down, I keep thinking about this and how exciting it is to be a civil engineer. And our world has technologically exploded in the last 100 years or so. If you think back to the year 1000, we're talking about transportation now in your course, we had horses. The year 1900, we still had horses. The year 2000, we had cars, trains, airplanes, rockets. You know, we went from the picture on the left to the picture on the right in basically 100 years. Tremendous excitement and development in the world of transportation. At the same time, the number of credit hours that it takes to become a civil engineer has actually decreased. You know, in my time, we took 150 credit hours. Today, we're down to around 120 credit hours. So on one side, you have this explosion of technology and new developments. And at the same time, we have a decrease in the number of credit hours that's required. So that is a problem, and we're trying to address this at ASCE. What I wish to work on as your president is a number of things. First, I wish to listen and communicate with you. That's why I'm looking forward to the questions at the end. I want to work on the student transition rate, which is currently at 17%. I'd like to increase this significantly. We have 150,000 members in ASCE, 50,000 of which are students. And only 17% of those 50,000 transition to full membership after graduation. To me, ASCE has tremendous value. And I started with the technical committees where I could interact as a young person with some of the people that had written the textbooks that I had learned from. So that was pretty exciting to be able to talk to those people. I also want to foster a better interaction between institute and regions. We certainly need infrastructure renewal. We just came out with the report card on America's infrastructure. Our grade has gone up from a D+ to a C-, so we're working in the right direction. But C- is not exactly a grade that we should aspire to. And so we still have a lot of work to do. And then ASCE must be financially sound. And so we're working on the budget issues and so on. Some recent developments at ASCE, I mentioned the report card on infrastructure, and some numbers there, since we're civil engineers. Each year, every family in the country loses $3,300 in disposable income that vanishes because we're stuck in traffic, or we have to repair our car because of potholes damage, and many other things. $3,300 per year. There are 130 million families approximately in the country. So if you multiply $3,300 a year by 130 million family, you end up with almost $500 billion that go out the window because of our poor infrastructure. ASCE has estimated that Congress needs to fund infrastructure to the tune of $300 billion a year for 10 years, so that we can increase that grade to something we can really be proud of. We have a new code of ethics. And in my mind, you know, when I think of ethics, I think of a good judgment, behavior that is associated with good judgment. We have something coming up, which is students voting. The board has voted to make sure that students can vote. And because that requires a change in our constitution, the members have the final say when it comes to allowing the students to vote. And you know, there are many aspects. The vote, by the way, on the board of ASCE has 18 members, and the vote was 17-1. So very, very much a majority vote in favor of students voting. So I hope that if you're an eligible voter within ASCE, you will vote yes when that comes up in May of this year. I do, you know, we keep talking about students being important to us. Now's the time to show them respect and allow them to vote. Some people argue, well, they don't pay any dues. Actually, they do. They pay dues to their ASCE chapters. And they also pay dues in my mind, because as civil engineers, we're well paid to be civil engineers, but the students pay tuition and fees to the tune of several $10,000 per year. And so they pay to become civil engineers, whereas we are being paid to be civil engineers. So those arguments in my mind don't weigh in, and I hope you will vote yes on this when it comes up in May 2021. And then we've moved to all meetings being virtual until the end of June 2021 because of the virus. I think we're ramping up the vaccine. I hope you will all get vaccinated soon. I got my 2 shots because I'm old, so I guess I was on the priority list. All right, so let's move to technical communication, and I'll try to put a little bit of humor and philosophy in this, and highlight some leadership skills that might help you by telling you some of the, and sharing some of the stories that I have faced as I grew up and studied, and then traveled extensively, about some 90 countries in total, and share some of those things with you. So I'll start with a video. I've got to change this thing and click on the laser pointer again so I can play this video. Nothing to do with technical communication, a little bit to do with transportation. I just wanted to start with a bang. So we work on this for protection of embassies, and the goal there is to arrest the truck with a bomb in the back within 1 meter of impact. And so we have to design a pile that will stop about an 8-ton truck coming at the pile at about 60 miles an hour. All right, so communication. To start with, I believe it's essential to your health. I left France after my bachelor's degree and went to Canada to do my master's degree in geotechnical engineering. And I didn't speak the language, so the English. 1972, I landed in Canada and I felt totally lost. For about 1 month, I was truly unable to communicate with my peers, with the people around me, because I didn't speak the language. At the same time, I knew this was a sacrifice I had to make, because it was the only way that I could learn English fast, and I felt that it was a very important language for me to learn. But I can assure you that during that 1 month, I was very depressed. And that's why I make the statement that communication is essential to your health. I truly believe that if you put a person in a room with all the food, amenities, and even the TV if you wish, but you don't allow them to communicate with their peers and the people around them, they're very likely to go crazy or to be depressed. And so truly communication is essential to your health. The most important concept in my mind in technical communication is to be brief, to be clear, to be right technically, of course, we're engineers, and to be correct from the point of view of communication. But these are, to me, the 4 most important aspects of being a good communicator. Now, you need to learn about your audience a little bit before you try to communicate. And here's an example. If you try to communicate, this is a water level on a barn during a flood along the Mississippi River. If your audience is a farmer, that picture probably will tell the farmer, look, the water was that high And so you better get whatever is inside your barn out of there because you're in trouble. And that's the best way to communicate risk with that particular person. If, on the other hand, your audience is professors that know about risk in engineering practice, you may want to show this plot, which has on the vertical axis the annual probability of failure, and on the horizontal axis, dollars lost, the value of the consequence, either in dollars lost at the bottom or fatalities at the top. And then on that plot, you can put human activities like open pit mine slopes, heart disease, cancer, car accident, bridge scour, plane crash, dams. And then you can see where they all line up. This is the bad side of that plot. This is the good side of that plot. So plane crashes are not very risky. Car accidents are actually more risky. But people don't tend to worry too much about driving their car, and they tend to be a little bit hesitant of being in an airplane. So study your audience and think about who you're talking to. Now, one of the lessons that I learned early is not to shy away from challenging situations. It's one of the best ways to become a leader. Don't be afraid to take on challenges. I mean, you don't want to be reckless, obviously, but let me tell you this story. So I land in Canada, and after 2 years at the University of New Brunswick, where I learned, I got my master's degree, I'm hired by the department head to teach in that department because I really enjoyed being a teaching assistant as a student. And so he hired me. And at the beginning of the semester, there was always, he would come to, this was a small university, and the Department of Civil Engineering had about 15 professors. And the department head would bring the professors in that room, and he would write the list of courses that had to be taught that semester. And he would say, who wants to teach what course? So the older profs, you know, would take structural mechanics, geotechnical engineering, hydraulics, or, you know, some of those courses that the students are interested in and the profs enjoy teaching. And I was new at it, so I sat in the back and I didn't say anything. And then as all the courses were being taken, I could see the list decreasing. And then at the end, the department head looks at me in the back and said, Briaud, you're new here. I said, yes, sir. He said, technical communications. Holy smokes. I said, sir, I can hardly speak English. He said, doesn't matter, Briaud, technical communications. So I had to teach technical communication for a whole semester to 70 students or so who didn't want to be there, were not interested in learning that topic. And oh, it was so tough, so very tough. But I probably learned a lot more about technical communication in that semester than my students did. But as a result of this, you fast forward some 40 years or so, I made sure to include a chapter in my textbook on geotechnical engineering about technical communication. So chapter 27 in that book is on technical communication. So the lesson there is don't shy away from challenging situations. If you hesitate, do it. Do it carefully and with good preparation, but you will learn so much. Use proper means of communication. You know, these days we have a tremendous number of ways to communicate with each other. Email, phone calls, visits, and social media, texting. There are so many different ways, but they're not the same. Emails, we receive a lot of emails each day. And there is a time where the situation might be such that the email is not the way to respond or not the way to communicate. If things become quite, if there is tension associated with a certain communication, a certain message, the phone call may be better. For one thing, typically in a phone call, nothing is recorded. So there is more freedom in a phone call than in an email. And you can communicate empathy better in a phone call than in an email. And even the phone calls have limits. And a personal visit may be the best way to solve a problem. So to think about this, what is the best way to do it? I tend to send email. Okay, send email because it's relatively quick and you can do that fairly fast. But sometimes it's the wrong way to communicate. So think about which way is the best. Dare to speak in public. That's very important. I mentioned that the summit that we had with the clients, leaders of groups, like departments of transportation, oil companies, utility companies that we visited with, they said, speaking in public is a talent that is necessary for the best in our business, for the leaders in our business. And so you can join Toastmasters or be part of Rotary and, practice presenting in public. I was talking to Dr. Jones earlier, your department head, and we were saying that it's very difficult to teach that at the undergraduate level because you learn by practicing, you learn by talking in front of people. And so if in a undergraduate class, you give every student 15, 20 minutes to practice to speak in front of their peers, the whole semester is gone. So it's very difficult to do it, but there are other avenues, and do take the time to do that because it becomes very valuable and it makes a difference later in life. You may have two employees that can solve a structural or transportation problem, but one of them is truly outstanding at communicating. Well, guess who's going to be selected by the director to go visit with the client? Control quality. Spelling is very important, but now we have spell check, so that helps a lot. Grammar certainly is important as well. Pronunciation of names. We are a country made of many different folks that come from many different places in the world. And so you're likely to come across not just Tom Smith, but Jean-Louis Briaud as well. So take the time. I'll tell you another story. So I come and I land in Texas A&M University in 1978. And the department head is Professor Teddy Hirsch, very good friend. And Dr. Hirsch brings the group together, the civil engineering professors together, and he says in front of all of them, I don't know, maybe 50 of them or so, and he says, I want to introduce to you a new member, a new young professor that just joined our team. And his name is, and he pulls this piece of paper, and I could see in his eyes in a split second, he was thinking, holy smokes, I forgot to ask him how to pronounce his name. And so it came out something like Jean-Louis Briaud. I said, oh my goodness, I didn't know that was my name. So do take the time to check how to say by the way, so Jean-Louis Briaud. Briaud is like as if it was B-R-I-O, Briaud. Here's another movie. All right, so we can go to that movie. This is transportation in the sense of roadside safety. And in this case, unlike the previous movie, we do care about the driver. So this was a soft landing in this case. Beware of local customs. If you're going to travel, as I did, in many countries, you're going to find yourself in situations that may be a little bit odd, because customs change with countries. So I find myself in Korea, I don't know, 1986 or something like that. And they've invited me very nicely. And we're going around the city visiting projects. And I'm trying to be polite. So every time I go into a car, there's a driver and I'm with a colleague. And I say to the colleague, go ahead, take the front seat, which is the polite way of doing things when you're in the United States. And a bit to my surprise, every time I did that, that person would jump in the front seat as opposed to hesitating. No, you go ahead and take the front seat. No, please, no hesitation. They would jump on the front seat and give me the back seat. And then later on, I realized that in Korea, the best seat in the car is the seat in diagonal from the driver. The seat that you would take in the taxi, for example. In other words, I was trying to be nice and polite, and I was essentially offering the worst seat in the car to my colleague. So, one of the things I do now when I come to a country, I try to explain, look, I don't know all your customs. I want to be polite. Please let me know if you see something that's not quite right. Know your rights. It's important. You will find out, or you have found out, that when you deal with people, you deal with very different characters. Some people are very strong-minded and don't mind telling you what they think and will not budge. Others are relatively soft, if you wish, in the fact that they will accept your point of view. So in dealing with those different types of people, you need to have the courage to stick to your own opinion. And I keep being reminded of this statement, and I know they use it in Alcoholics Anonymous, but I think it goes further back. And it goes, have the courage to change the things that you can change, have the discipline to accept those that you cannot change, and have the wisdom to know the difference. And this is something that's really helped me in my life as you face situations where you're really upset about something. And you need to decide whether you're going to spend the energy to change what is upsetting you, or you say, well, I don't have that much energy and I'm more interested in making a difference here. So forget this, I will accept it, and it's no longer a problem. And sometimes it's easier said than done, but you can choose that way. What are the things that you really want to change, and those that you're ready to accept? In fact, running for president of ASCE was one of those things where I really wanted to change something, and so I decided to get involved. Communicate between fields of engineering. Civil engineering has a tremendous advantage that we're very, very diversified. Some of you are learning about transportation. We also have structures, geotechnical, hydraulics, and a number of, and it's amazing, I'll make the point in a minute, it's amazing how we operate at different probability of failure level. The precision that we work with in structures, to a structural engineer, plus or minus 5% is something they're comfortable with. In geotech, plus or minus 30% is something that people would be very comfortable with. If you go to hydrology, for example, predicting the 100-year flood, my goodness, the precision is much lower than that. In fact, when I look at the scatter in geotechnical engineering, you plot predicted versus measured for pile capacity, for example, you have a certain scatter. If you look at the hydrology predictions, that scatter is the same, but on log-log plots. And so there is a tremendous variation between fields of engineering, and we need to somehow communicate among each other, even though we're still in the same field, civil engineering, and make sure we aim from the same probability of failure times the value of the consequence, and all operate at the same risk level. And this is an example, again, of communication. So here, this is a bit of a busy slide, but this is the new Woodrow Wilson Bridge across the Potomac River in Washington, D.C. So here is the river right here. And here's the bridge. And these are the supports, okay? The big thing here is that the scale is totally distorted. This is 70 meters, and this represents several miles. But we do that because we want to emphasize the thickness of the layers. But this is the true scale here, this skinny drawing at the very top. This is true scale. And that's one of the things that's very important in my mind in civil engineering. Whatever discipline you're in, make sure you start the problem with a diagram to scale. Making the diagram to scale, whatever the problem is, will help you to understand what the problems are. For example, driving a pile in the ground. If I go in front of the students and I draw a pile as a big, thick member, nobody will think that buckling is a problem. But if I do it to scale and I put the hammer on top and the students see that the member itself, the pile itself, is a long, skinny piece of wood, for example, they will think about buckling as an issue. And this is the Woodrow Wilson Bridge, the replacement bridge. This is the old Woodrow Wilson Bridge replaced. You can see the massive scale of this new bridge. Seek communication to solve problems. I really believe that personal discussions are best. I mentioned earlier that this is not always true. Now, some people will not, they cannot be convinced. They're so sold on their ideas that it's going to be very difficult to even communicate, let alone try to change their mind. So I still believe that 90% of the time, personal discussions can solve problems. You will find that in some cases, it's quite difficult. And then you just have to agree to disagree. Listening is very difficult. I mentioned a few, these 20% bananas and Carol Shields here are for me to remember some of the stories, but let me tell you about Carol Shields. So Don Shields was my PhD advisor, wonderful person, very practical. I learned a lot from him. But there's something I learned from his wife, Carol Shields, which was remarkable. I remember at one point, I met her and I started to visit with her, and about 30 minutes or so. After 30 minutes, she knew everything about me. I knew nothing about her. She had been listening. This was really sort of a wake-up call for me to worry about what people think, to ask them, how are you doing? To ask them about their family, to ask them, this is a very important part of the communication, to try to learn from others. Listening is very difficult. And it's not just being quiet and taking in the information. It's wondering, it's empathizing, it's putting yourself in the other person's shoes and trying to communicate in that fashion. And that goes a long way to being a good communicator. Here it is, putting yourself in the other person's shoes, empathize. The bear, the bear story is, this is a joke, okay? So these two folks are coming into a meadow, and in this field there is a bull, and the bull is charging against those two people that are walking in the field. Two solutions. You can, there is a big hole, big black hole that you can jump in and stay away from the bull that's charging, or you can climb in a tree and stay on the branch, and so that you stay away from the bull. And so one person goes in the hole, one person goes in the tree. And about 30 seconds later, the person that was in the hole runs out, and the bull is charging, and runs out towards the tree. The person in the tree grabs the hand of that fellow and brings that person on the branch. And at the same time says, "You dummy, why in the heck did you not stay in the black hole? You were safe." And the other person says, "Well, I'm sorry, but in the black hole, there was a huge bear. And that's why I got out of it." So sometimes we just don't understand that there's a bear in the black hole, and we don't understand why people are doing what they're doing. And so it's important to try to put yourself in the other person's shoes, ask the question, why did you do that? And better understand. Be clear, be brief with your message. And here I've got a number of stories, but maybe the one that I will share with you is actually not one of those blue ones. So I'm, now we're back in 1972. I'm at the airport in Paris, Charles de Gaulle, and I'm saying goodbye to my parents because I'm going to the University of New Brunswick in Canada to do my master's degree. So obviously I'm not too happy. But I turned to my father, they're boarding the plane. I turned to my father and I said, "Look, I'm going to a country where I know nobody and I don't speak the language. They didn't speak English. And do you have any good advice?" He said, "Son, it's simple. The minute you get there, you find yourself a girlfriend, she will solve all your problems." And and I think about this because he was extremely clear. Find yourself a girlfriend. That was the message. He was very brief, and he had to be because I was boarding the plane. And this stayed with me the whole trip. And after a few iterations, I met Janet, my wife, and we're still happily married. And as an example of this type of message, I got involved in a remarkable consulting job where I worked with the American Congress to help slow down the erosion of the cliffs in Normandy in France. This is where young Americans on June 6, 1944, I wasn't born yet, but many young Americans came to deliver my parents, essentially, forever grateful. And I found myself at the bottom of those cliffs, and I said, "There's no way I could climb those cliffs 30 meter, 100-foot tall cliffs, and let alone people shooting at me from the top. So the message, imagine the situation, you're in charge of this invasion, the D-Day invasion, and you don't want to give the enemy the day and time when you want the element of surprise, obviously. And bombing is important to weaken the defense. So the bombing took place on 25 April, 13 May, 22. So every time the enemy was thinking, oh, they're coming on the 14th of May. No, they're not. So bombing on the 22nd of May. Oh, they're coming on the 23rd. No. And then 4, 5, 6 June. And so this is what these cliffs look like. And as I said, this is 100-foot tall. And these are the craters. It's a remarkable sight if you go there. And here are those General Earl Rudder, who later became president of Texas A&M University, and 200 Rangers assaulted those cliffs. And unfortunately, only about half of them made it to the top. And so here it is today. So great privilege for me to be part of this and try and interact with the general in Paris, who was in charge of this reconstruction and countermeasure. So here's the problem, the civil engineering problem. Here is the bunker that the Americans were trying to save, because the erosion, there was a retreat of the cliff here, and the bunker was about to fall in the sea. And there were some meetings. So I spoke English, I spoke French, and I knew I was a geotechnical engineer. So very often I was not only the engineer on the job, but I was also the translator between the American general and the person. So France is divided into a number of regions, like we have states, and so it would be the equivalent of the governor of a state in France. And the French fellow didn't speak much English, the general didn't speak much French, so I was trying to, and I was, at one point, the French person says, well, why don't we let the bunker go in the sea? This is a natural process. The general jumps up from his chair and says to him, looking at him straight in the eyes, sir, we lost a lot of young people on this one, and we are not going to let this thing go down in this. So the French governor looks at me and says, what did he say? And I said, sir, he's not very happy. So, but this was a remarkable. So that was the repair, if you wish. We put the bunker on the micropiles, and we backfilled the caverns that the sea was creating at the bottom of the cliffs, so that that could be solved. Think before you talk. Keep the big picture in mind. One-day moratorium. It's critically important. Let's say you get an email that's really nasty. Somebody is really upset at you and doesn't mind telling you straight that they're very unhappy, and you disagree with that person. The best thing to do is not to answer, at least not right away. Just leave it there 24 hours. By the way, if you never answer that email, the person that sent it may actually get really upset because, oh, maybe they didn't get that email, or what do they think? And so think of no answer, maybe the best answer, and give it 24 hours or even 2 days. If 2 or 3 days later it's still bothering you, then maybe you send a message, but give it some time. Concentrate on problem solving, not blame assigning. Be professional. Attack problems, not people. That's important. You'll see at the end. Keep a trump card in your back pocket. It's kind of a funny, personal story. One day I got invited to give the Hunt lecture at the Deep Foundation Institute. And the Hunt lecture is, has to be, Hal Hunt was a Deep Foundation engineer, and he was a very good communicator. And as his legacy, the DFI decided to create a Hal Hunt lecture on communication. And I was invited to give this. And so I said, well, I think I'm going to keep that as my trump card, so that when my wife, Janet, who is absolutely wonderful, tells me that I'm not a good communicator, I can pull that one out of my back pocket and say, see, maybe you're not right. Oh, here's a movie. This is a big truck against a barrier to redirect the truck. And by the way, the movie stops here because the truck is going straight at the cameraman. And so that's the reason. 2 positive for every negative. That's important. And I learned this from Janet, because I was coaching I play a lot of tennis. I love the game. I was coaching my kids, and because I wanted them to be perfect, you know, if I would watch them play a match, I would go visit with them afterwards, or in the drive back from the tournament, I would explain to them what they did wrong and what they could do better and so on. And Janet said, you need to give them 2 positive for every negative. And that's a very, very good advice. Every time you have something nasty to say to somebody, make sure you blend it with some positives so that it's easier to accept. The other thing is, if you develop with people that you really care about, a cushion of love, if you wish. When you have something to say that's not friendly, the cushion will absorb some of the negative side of your statement. So that's a very good advice. Timing is important. And I'll tell you the lettuce story. This is a joke again. This fellow comes in a grocery store and goes to the produce department and tells the attendants, sir, I would like to buy a half a head of lettuce. And the attendant says, a half a head of lettuce? Yes. Says, well, sir, I'm not sure I can do that. Let me go in the back and ask the manager. So he goes through the swinging doors and doesn't see that the client has actually followed him. And so the attendant gets to the manager and he says, there is an absolute moron in the store that wants to buy half a head of lettuce. And he turns around and sees the client and say, oh, and this nice gentleman wants to buy the other half. So saving it fast. So timing is important. Think about this. There are times to say things and others to not say it. Little luck doesn't hurt. The Washington Monument is a good example. Here is the monument. If you've been there, you see right here, if you see my cursor, that the monument changes color about 50 meters up in the air, 150 feet. And the reason is that they ran out of money when they reached that level during the construction process. And basically because they ran out of money and they stopped the work in 1855. And then that stub, if you wish, stood there for about 20 years. The Civil War took place during that time. And the monument was completed in 1983 or 4, I forget exactly. But had it been continued in 1855, we would today have the Leaning Monument of Washington. So a little luck doesn't heard. And these are, so I want to finish, let me see, yeah, I've got about a few more minutes, and let me pass on this. I will send a copy of my presentation to Dr. Wang, and so you'll have all those philosophical saying. Well, maybe I can take a minute to. It's nice to be important, but it's more important to be nice. And a few of those are mine, but most of them are not. Things should be made as simple as possible, but not any simpler than that. Einstein. Imagination is more important than knowledge. I believe that's Einstein as well. Don't ever, 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 ever quit. Jimmy Valvano, coach of North Carolina State University, basketball coach, as he's dying of cancer. Learn from the past, but most importantly, concentrate on the next point. I'm the culprit on this one. And I derive this from tennis. You know, it's good to learn from the past. What have I done wrong, is so you don't repeat the mistakes. But the most important point is the next one. Don't worry about the one after that and after that. Just concentrate on the next point. Good judgment comes from experience, but experience comes from bad judgment. So learn from the bad judgment of others. You don't have time to make all the mistakes yourself. Do not be afraid to challenge even the most established concepts. I learned that from Professor Landva during my master's degree. The harder you work, the luckier you get. My father told me that, and I'm still struggling with that one. I'm not sure I can accept that. All the shots that you do not take, do not go in. Wayne Gretzky, the great hockey player. Behind every difficulty, there is an opportunity. The race for quality has no finish line. Nothing happens unless first a dream. Save money while you're young. Oh, that's from Janet. She's a financial planner, and it's so true. You know, it's if you've done economic studies, you have the formula 1 plus I to the n, where I is the annual return and n is the number of years. And so if n is large, if you start saving when you're 25, by the time you're 65, you'll have a nice nest egg. Anger is 1 letter away from danger. Some people may hate you, but they only win if you hate them back. Richard Nixon, as he's leaving the White House. The tongue weighs practically nothing, but so few can hold it. You should do things as if everyone will know about it. If someone betrays you once, it's their fault. If it happens twice, it's your fault. Do not worry or stress, simply concentrate and prepare. Hear your life 1 point at a time. You know, we face a lot of stress in our work, but stress is largely self-imposed, and we tend to worry too much. That doesn't mean we can be reckless and you know, say I don't care all the time, but it's important to concentrate and to prepare. And if you concentrate and you prepare, you should not worry or stress. It's bad for your health, for one thing. And so concentrate and prepare. And if you concentrated and you have prepared, then you should not worry or stress. You know, things are going to happen to the best of your ability. So I'll pass on this. And I'll finish with the rules for a successful career. It's a bit of a, you know, a rule, the 10 lists, David Letterman sort of thing. Rule number 10 for a successful career. Choose the relentless pursuit of excellence as a way of life. Rule number 9, be curious. Rule number 8, work hard, but balance your interests. Rule 7, make lots of friends. That's your public relations. Rule number 6, look for solution and not who's to blame. Rule number 5, be firm in your decisions, but fair and polite. Rule number 4, treat others as you wish to be treated. Rule number 3, communication is the best way to solve problems. Rule number 2, surround yourself with smart people. And rule number 1, go after your dreams with vision and perseverance. I believe, yes, and remember to keep on smiling no matter what, because happiness is a choice. Thank you for your attention. Oh, I had one more movie about that. That was for the transportation class, your roadside safety. Thank you, everybody. I'll be glad to answer a question if you have. If Dr. Wong wants to read them to me, or because I don't see anything here.
Sure, thanks a lot, Professor Briaud. There are some questions I think people may still be typing. I got actually an email and a student asking, you had a slide showing make sure you lose, and they did not understand what you mean.
Well, this was, this is something I put in the rules for a successful marriage. And the make sure you lose was to remind me to tell you that, you know, when you're married or when you have a close relationship with somebody that you interact with them very frequently, a colleague, so on, there will be time where you have strong disagreement. And the rule in this case was make sure that you never, ever win an argument. And that was, you know, in particular in the case of a spouse. And I was thinking then of all the arguments that I've had, well, the discussions, I should say, that I've had with Janet, I can't remember of one that was worth winning. So thinking of the big picture is very important. I put an exception in there when I told the story. I said, except for the one about buying the Corvette, which I managed to convince her. You know, Corvettes. I'm a sports car fan, and I enjoy those things. And so she said, well, there's no room for the kids, you know, in the back. There's only 2 seats, and it goes fast, but you have speed limits. So say, and then I finally managed to convince her that saying that all I was trying to do is to decorate the garage, and because she loves to decorate the house, so that was my trait to try to convince her.
That's great. Thank you. There's another comment, actually. Listen and silent contain the same letters. You must be silent to listen. I think that's a great comment. I actually have a question relevant to that. You mentioned about being a good listener is important. What's your advice for being a good listener, in addition to be silent?
Yes. I think the empathy is the other, beside the being silent, trying to empathize with the person, trying to wonder what they're facing, and asking the questions that will either relieve their sorrow or their stress. You know, a little bit like psychologists do. The psychologists tend to bounce back the question. You know, you say to a psychologist, well, you know, I'm depressed because my back end antenna doesn't work at all. I don't know what I'm doing. What do you think? And the psychologist will say, well, what do you think? You know, they'll send the question back. And So I think empathy is important, and saying, well, how do you feel about it? What would be an important next step? And that tends to generate more conversation. I'm not particularly good at this. I just think that, as I say, Carol Shields changed my mind in 1978 or so about asking people how they're doing.
Looks like we have a communication issue. Yeah.
Okay.
You're back. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have another question. So before the pandemic, face-to-face meeting is a very important way for people to interact and communicate. But now we have moved all these events to virtual or online, and they are certainly associated with some needs for the communication change. So what is your advice about making a good use of this online resources to do a better job in communication, including technical communications?
I think I'm a firm believer that any problem or anything even in life has a good side and a bad side. Of course, the bad side with our virtual world nowadays is that we don't get to shake hands with people, to share coffee together and discuss and talk about family. This virtual world, even though there are cameras and Zoom meetings, is a little bit less personal, no doubt. But there is a number of positive aspects to this. For example, the meetings that we have can draw from international audiences much more easily. We've seen at ASCE that we have an increase in the number of participants in some of the meetings and conferences that we organize because there's no longer this traveling barrier. It also reduces travel budget. So we stand to save some money on the travel for committee meetings. So there are definitely some, and by the way, this is something that many people wanted to do, to be able to communicate in this virtual world. We talked 10 years ago about a virtual conference. Nobody was interested in doing it. Now we were forced to do it, and it's going really well. I can tell you that ASCE turned the corner in no time flat and is now really well positioned to organize things virtually. Not to say that it's easy, but they really have put the technology to work and are extremely helpful in organizing those sorts of meetings. Mm-hmm. The cost certainly is an advantage. Now the question is, let's say that we fast forward to June or August 2021, and hopefully by then we're done with the virus, everybody's vaccinated. What do we do next? I think that the trend will be, we are not going to abandon online virtual meetings. It's just too convenient for too many people. When I go to an ASCE conference 10 years ago, it would cost me about $3,000 between the hotel, the airline, the taxi, the registration. 3 days, $3,000. Today, your virtual conference, $500. So the cost has been decreased by a factor of 6. That's hard to beat. Yeah. But as we go into the post-virus era, there will be a need for more in-person meetings than what we're doing today. Unfortunately, a hybrid version of in-person and online is actually more expensive than the in-person meeting or the online meeting. So it's the cost is gonna rise as it is associated with this hybrid solution.
Yeah, so there are some more questions came in. One question is, what your recommendations do you have to bridge communication gaps between operations and engineers, the software folks?
Communication between engineers and?
Between operations and engineers / software folks.
Well, I'm not sure I understand the question. So you mean folks that write the software and people that use the software? Is that what you understand?
My understanding is the communication gap between operations, like you're the operation person for this infrastructure. You need to communicate with the engineers and the software engineer, those kind of communication.
Yeah, I think the infrastructure discussion needs to involve everybody. It's important. I mean, I'm reminded of this report card thing that we're working on, and I talked last week to the office of 2 senators, and it's amazing to see how different people have different views. You would think infrastructure is something that everybody is in favor of, and so therefore it would be a bipartisan decision. But unfortunately, how to pay for it is something where there is some distinct approaches. The Republicans don't want to raise taxes. The Democrats are favorable to raising taxes, like maybe 5 cents on the gasoline. The tax on the gasoline is still at, I forget what it is, 18 cents per gallon. It was like this in 1993, and it hasn't been increased. It's not a percentage of the price of the gallon. It's 18 cents regardless of the year.
Mm-hmm.
So that that's an issue that needs to be solved. Many of the states have raised the gas tax, or from their own point of view, but federally it has not happened. And you know a lot more than I do about this.
I think that the next question is also relevant to funding. You said that it will take billions of government funding to fix our current infrastructure. Has the government offered to expand the budget closer to what ASCE has requested?
There's a lot of progress, I must say. And I do think that I'm very hopeful that this year, I mean, we're talking about a lot of money, okay? There's been, we've spent what, $4 trillion so far as a relief package for the virus. And $4 trillion is the budget of the country, yearly budget of the country. So that's a huge amount of money. So when you come after those 2 bills, the more recent one being, in my mind, about to pass, and you ask for another $2 trillion for infrastructure, there is funding fatigue from the point of view of Congress. But there's still a number of issues that have shown progress. And I think that the virus, again, may help us because we need our economy to recover. And what best way to do that by creating jobs and renovating our infrastructure. So I'm very hopeful. Every administration that comes in, one after the other, sites infrastructure as a way to move the country forward. But I think this time we're probably in even better shape. We don't see action, but this time, I don't know. I have a good feeling. Maybe I'm wrong.
You'll be right. You'll be correct. I don't see any new questions, but I want to bring up the last question. There are a lot of students and younger professionals in civil engineering listeners today to your webinar. Do you have any like recommendations or advice about how to be successful in this challenging pandemic situation?
I'll tell you two things, and I'll go back to rule number one. Go after your dream with a passion. You have to be reasonable in everything you do, obviously, but go after your dream. For example, as a parent, you have children, and you may want your children to be something that they don't want to be. And you tend to think, well, I know better than they do because they're young and inexperienced and I've got experience and so on. But maybe they don't have the fire in the belly for what you're trying to get them to do. So listening to them as they're teenagers and what really they do care about, and let them have a little bit of freedom as to what they wish to do. Sometimes the best way to learn is to make mistakes. And I did end up listening to my father when it came to finding a girlfriend. But the last thing I want to say is there is tremendous value in being a member of ASCE. You know, it's to me, it's extremely valuable from so many points of view. And I've recorded a video to talk about this. And I'm going to send it to all the department heads, to all the student chapters, to all the student conferences. I wish I could go to see everybody, but short of that, if you can take 5 or 10 minutes to look at this video, and hopefully I can convince you that being a member of ASCE is really a good deal. If nothing else, for all the friends that you're going to make in your life. And, you know, at first I was talking to Dr. Jones, your head department earlier, talking about the fact that my generation was interested in making a lot of money. But the newer generation is more interested in saving the world, climate change, sustainability, environment, caring for the planet. These are important things to the younger generation. And ASCE is definitely oriented towards the younger generation, I feel, and about these sorts of things: climate change, diversity, equity, inclusion, sustainability, resilience. And you will find your friends, and you can change the world through ASCE, because you will have much more of an impact if you are on an ASCE team than if you're battling the world all by yourself. So I'll get off my soapbox here and I'll sign out.
There are two more questions came in. I'm not sure if you still have.
Okay.
Yeah, so one question is about the balancing. You know, you are chasing your own dream, but certainly your total time is limited. How do you balance life and your desire of being successful in your professional path?
That's an extremely important aspect of life. You know, you want to be and different times of your life, you have different priorities. And it's important to have some sort of balance. And the balance for me might be different from the balance for you or for another younger person. But it's important to reach a balance when it comes to work, to family. You also want to be somewhat fit so you can feel good about your body. if financially fit as well. I mean, you need to worry. There's a lot of things to study and optimize. I can tell you in my case, from 20 to or from 15 to 25, I wanted to enjoy life. I was one of the worst students you can. Don't listen to this, okay? But I was a bad student. I wanted to enjoy life. 25 to 35, I wanted to study and learn. Also, 35 to 45, I wanted to make money. I really wanted to make a difference and make money. And at 45, I started to realize that this world is all about people. And that interacting with people, being nice, trying to help out was very important. And during that whole time, there was a period of time from 1990 to 1998 where I devoted a lot of time to my children. And my career took a dip. You know, I didn't publish as much, and my department head was not happy with me, but that was a decision I made. My kids are number one, because one colleague of mine told me one day, he said, Jean-Louis, you're working very hard. Be careful. Take the time to enjoy your children. Because my children were born, he said, and my children were out of the house, 18 years old. I never saw anything in between because I worked right through and I missed that in my life. So that was extremely good advice.
Yeah, that's excellent advice. I certainly agree with you. There are also two questions relevant. You mentioned that it's very hard to convince people who are very firm on their position. And how would you deal with those people if their position is in direct opposition to something you are trying to do? And how to reach to people who don't feel want to be approached?
Yeah, I would say challenge them to a tennis game. No, seriously, it's not easy. And you have to look at all your options. For example, if you're an engineer, a civil engineer in a company, and your boss is absolutely unbearable, you have options. You know, you can fight and go over their head and explain that I had a problem like this with the department head. Okay, I went to see the dean, and the dean said, I understand your position. He said, look, you're a professor, you don't like your department head. You have two choices. You have this big truck that's coming at you. He was talking about the department head. Full speed ahead. You can lay your body across the road and he's gonna run over you. It will feel a little bump, but that's not gonna make much difference. Or you can step aside and let him crash at the next corner. And that was very good advice. I stepped aside, and indeed, he crashed at the next corner. So that was one solution, but you also can go somewhere else. So look at all your options. And again, make the decision as to, you know, it's your life and you have to optimize it. And sometimes the choice is not easy, including it's not the one that you favor, but it may be the optimum solution.
That's great. Thanks a lot for your webinar talk, your advice, and your answers to our questions. So all the questions are cleared, and we're also at the end of the webinar time. Thank you again for spending your time visiting us virtually and gave the advice to our students, working professionals who joined this webinar today.
Yeah, my pleasure. I wish I could see all of you and have a chat, and but we'll do that next time.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you, and thanks everyone for joining the webinar. The webinar is now over. Have a nice day.